going on? What's going on, my people? So I'm just addressing this situation with Glovegate with Tyson Fury. And I usually don't speak on it much, but I think I'm gonna start to elaborate more on things that I see. I feel like in this particular situation that a lot of people are led by uh, ethnocentric emotion. Like a lot of our people, black people, we are very highly motivated by race. And although I am someone who knows the effects of racism, I can't let that mislead me in terms of proper judgment. And I think in this situation with Deontay and Tyson Fury, people must understand that these allegations that were made against Tyson Fury should be have been made before he fought again and before he lost. I feel like it's a move of being a sore loser and not being in denial of something that appears to be the truth. Once you see that it's not the result you like. For instance, why would it take over a year and a whole nother fight for them to realize that Tyson Fury cheated with his gloves in the first fight, and then they will post it after post the second fight as if that was what happened in the first fight, and then as if that's what happened in the second fight. My apologies. And then what they did was when people exposed that that was from the first fight because they tried to because he had green gloves in both fights. Then they said, well, yeah, that's just to prove that he cheated before. But they tried to expose it when you look at the earlier clips as if it was the second fight that he cheated like that in. So why didn't they observe it like that when he received the draw? It's because the majority of the people that were on Deontay's side and him being an American, and also because the most popular is most popularly dominated by black people, and Americans, if they have to choose between a white person and a black person, they're going to choose the white person. But if there's no white superstar boxer, they're going to go, of course, with the black person, 9 times out of 10, right? Just to represent America. It's going to always be, out nation versus nation. But overall, they're going to go by skill and character, right? So generally speaking, people are trying to make it a race issue when it's really more so a skill and character issue. Deontay Wilder has a history of saying things that contradict oneself, and then also having what he did was he put his foot in his mouth by making exaggerated claims, trying to walk in a likelihood of Mike Tyson. By for instance, he said he wants to catch a body really bad in a ring by fighting. And what happens is people did not respond to that because everybody knows that this is just a sport. You shouldn't want to kill someone. We knew that Mike Tyson, when he was saying that he wanted to stomp on kids' testicles, he was going through a very emotional, vulnerable state in his life. He wasn't at the peak. He was at a very low state, and he was so angry and frustrated with the way his life was going. He felt used and abused. So we saw an emotional character, or we saw him as the victim, although we know he was a ferocious fighter. With Deontay, and not to take anything away from him as a very talented fighter, he seemed to say it from a point of arrogance and entertainment, meaning that he wanted to see somebody not go home to their family and their kids for sheer sport. So it came off as something that was that was instigated by a kind of, sadistic mindset. What we consider our own demons. So Deontay had already started to take away from his ability to be that American all-star by certain statements and seeming as if he was contradicting himself, with sometimes seeming to try to appear as someone who's an intellectual and talking and make statements that sounded like he was using a good vocabulary, and he had a good vocabulary and he was very articulate, and sometimes he would get trapped up in his own words and use the wrong words. So people were not finding him as authentic as he should be. They wasn't finding him just to be the southern man who was hospitable, but they found him to sometimes seem like he was emulating characteristics that weren't necessarily authentic. However, with Tyson Fury, what they do see is someone who seems vulnerable, authentic, and somewhat more of a hero. He came from depression, anxiety, proving that the riches of the world does not validate one's soul, things of that nature. And I feel that people were just beginning to relate more to him as the underdog, and they weren't expecting him to win. But back to Glovegate, when you see the situation in the second fight, it's some key points that doesn't make much sense on to Tyson Fury's credit. Deontay Wilder in the beginning said that it was his weighted vest was too heavy. Now me, I weigh about 150 pounds. I wear weighted vests. And after it, this is definitely one of the things. Anybody who knows, if you wear anything with weights on, when you take it off, you feel more free and more light and more athletic. You don't put on weights and then take it off and feel like you're heavier and your legs are weaker. Actually, you get the opposite effect. Anybody who trains with ankle weights, or anything like that, or a weighted vest on, you do pull-ups or push-ups or jump or run. When you take it off, you feel more freedom. And that walk between the dressing room and the ring for a superstar 200 plus pound 6'7" athlete, 40 pounds isn't about nothing. I pick up my daughter on my back and she weighs more than 40 pounds, and we go all around the park, and that doesn't stop me from fighting or being an athlete. So that was the first excuse. Okay, then the second excuse was, well, Mark Breland threw out the towel too early. I should have went out on my shield. He thought he still had a fighting chance, right? And then it ended. He said he wasn't going to make an excuse, and then he was quiet the whole time, as if he had in his heart given, because he came back and made something about being a rising phoenix coming back from the ashes. But it's as if that the fans in boxing spectators had made a bunch of calculations and fed it to him, and then he began to believe it, and then he began to be quiet for a long enough time to let it separate. Because I feel like in his heart he believes he's a defeated man, but now he has let the audience give him the mindset of self-esteem so that he can portray that it was something else that happened. So in the sense of him not accepting the loss, he goes on to blame the referee, then the boxing commission, then his own trainer, and then he begins to blame everything. But see, this is the issue, because when he felt like he lost the first time, I know he felt like he lost because he was grateful and gracious he was grateful for a gracious draw in the first fight. When Tyson Fury looked as if he knew for a fact that he won, he was gracious, and it wasn't nobody's training. It wasn't no trainer's fault. It wasn't the boxing commission. It wasn't no conspiracy against him. He felt like he definitely got a gracious result, and it gave him an opportunity to hold on to him being undefeated and hold on to that WBC belt. But the second time, when it didn't go his way and he lost by knockout, it was everything but the fact that Tyson Fury was the better man that night. And now this brings it to another question. Okay, if Tyson Fury gloves were loaded, which glove was loaded? Was it the left hand and the right? Because Tyson Fury was hitting with some good left hooks and some right hands as well. But not only that, it took him 7 rounds to get you out of there. Where was Deontay Wilder power from round 1 to round 7? He's a knockout artist who can knock out someone between round 1 and round 12 at any point in time. Where was his power? Deontay Wilder landed several clean right hands. He landed several clean right hands that landed flush on the face of Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury it rolled off his face as if nothing even happened, as if he was just stronger and mightier, and he was just overall the more physically dominant man. Right? And I specifically think, prior to contrary to what everybody else thinks, I believe that this was a spiritual fight. I believe that regardless of who's into religion or not, I believe that when they had their face-off, right, at the table, when Deontay Wilder made a claim that was going to be his God versus Tyson Fury's God, which was Jesus Christ, the Lord Jesus Christ, versus the African ancestry spirits, which is who Deontay Wilder claims he calls on to become the Bronze Bomber, that night it was the Holy Spirit versus unclean spirits. That's what I truly believe. I believe that those spirits fled from him, and that the Holy Spirit was assisting Tyson Fury, and that this world, and I believe that most of these rich people, especially that run American facilities in politics and in entertainment businesses and just giant businesses in general. I believe that the higher up their influences are satanic. So when they realized that their All-American champion, who was representing unclean demonic spirits that he claimed he was doing, lost against Tyson Fury, they wanted to take away from the credibility that was going towards God or Jesus Christ. That's what I truly believe. No one has to believe that. Is fine. I'm just telling you what I believe. And I believe that same power that he yielded to fight all these other opponents, it departed from him because it wasn't of him. It was from unclean spirits, or he was dependent on having faith in unclean spirits. And you know that Jesus Christ cast out unclean spirits. So now it was just him, a pretty thin man against a bigger, stronger, more skilled man, and it was just his regular power. And he did not yield the same power that he called on these spirits in prior fights. I believe in the first fight, it was to show that through faith, Tyson Fury got off the ground in the 12th round, which 12 is the divine number. You got the 12 tribes of Israel, right? You got the 12 apostles. It's a holy number. And I believe that in the second fight, the perfect number being 7, you got the 7th day of rest and so forth, right? You know, the seventh day is considered, or the number 7, right, is considered a holy number as well. So I believe both times it was to bring forth the number 12 and the number 7, right? If you're into sometimes looking at things prophetically from numbers, you know, you got 144, 12, things divisible, multiplied by 12, the book of Jubilee, or you know, the year of Jubilee being 7 times 7, which is 49, right? So forth and so on. Not to get too super spiritual, but this is what I believe. I believe they both called out gods, and now it was the battle of the gods, right? And Tyson Fury had the true living God, and not that you can use God to influence fights, but if you have made it a stance of justice versus injustice, or good versus evil, of course the God of good is going to win. Of course, in some contexts, Goku will always beat Vegeta, right? Or Goku will always win against evil, right? Because he will be the representation of one who is deemed righteous. If you go into, just give me different examples for people who like to be religious, right? So long story short, in the context, it looked as if their man, their money man, the one who looks like he was going to hit new records and new heights and be able to yield and take back the medals back to America and bring the cash back to America, they had to, the Boxing Commission and different people, they had to, it was no longer about white, it was about American dollars, not pulling in this almighty, powerful, righteous God that people are against in these last days. And most of all, being able to say that American, the nation of America is the champion of the world, right? The nation of America is yielding the championships again. It's back in their own hands, and he was going to be the next all-star American boxer to do numbers, I guess, above Floyd, or he was predicted to be. It didn't look like it was many people besides Anthony Joshua who can beat him straight up, or deal with waiting for a right hand for 12 rounds. Nobody else yielded that kind of power where they look like they could threaten Deontay and match him with their athleticism for 12 rounds before he lands that one right hand. So it looks like they lost a lot of money, and it looks like they had to find something, because they checked the gloves. It was nothing there. They said that he must have cheated because of the first fight, but they didn't call it in the first fight. It was no problem when Deontay got a draw. And for some reason, Deontay yielded the same kind of power that knocked Tyson Fury down twice and almost knocked him completely out in the in the 12th round. The second fight, Tyson Fury put on more weight, trained harder, moved on the front foot. Deontay Wilder couldn't handle it, and it looked like a well-earned win fight. And it looked like it was metal hitting him. His face didn't look overwhelmingly beat in. They said that he had fractures in his skull, but we didn't see it. It looked like somebody photoshopped. I seen one picture, like, I used to Photoshop. It looked like somebody just pushed that in, and because when you see him in a regular fight, he didn't have any huge indentation in his head. So it looked as if these things were coming. Now these days, you can, without a true fat fracture, or like, you know, a bone fracture or something broken, you can get a doctor to pretty much write anything on a report. You could go and say you got a cough, and the doctor will give you, you know, pills or drugs for your cold, if that you claim, or your back hurts, and they will just tell you something is wrong. You're probably suffering from this, that, and the other. So you can impose on the doctor's decisions on what he puts down on paper from claims. People do it all the time. So we didn't see any true evidence that that Deontay Wilder was suffering from any fractures of the skull. But here's the biggest thing: how are you going to say that you have an unfaithful trainer named Mark Breland, a world champion, 5-time Golden Glove champion, and you were getting hit in the head with the egg weight? How is he an unloyal person and he wasn't willing to let you get beat in the head with the egg weight for another 5 rounds? You could have died if now let's take it to why Mark Breland deserves his credibility. Because if Deontay Wilder was getting hit with an egg weight from a 260-something or 70-something pound man at 6'9" for 12 rounds straight, he could have been dead. So Mark Breland, not knowing if it was an egg weight in his hand, stopped the fight, seeing the way his fighter was reacting. Why would people approve of Deontay Wilder firing him if he was being cheated out of a fight? What else was he supposed to do? He sees his fighter just getting pounded on like that. And not to mention, he's getting pounded on with something that was a metal object in his hand, if this is true. He should commend him because Deontay Wilder is clearly victorious in the winner anyway, and that ruling would have to be overturned. So not only did he save his fighter from getting a further beatdown, but he saved them from having worse damage that could have been permanent. See, so if you believe that, if Deontay in his heart believes that that he was being cheated, then why would you be mad at Mark Breland for stopping the fight at that point in time? And now just working on getting that decision overturned because you've been cheated out of, or robbed out of the fight twice. That doesn't make any sense logically. So I'm not one who's going to be yielding to emotional, ethnocentric arguments. Oh, we're black, we got to stick for the black man. Not if it's not true, or not if it's not a righteous judgment. When it's righteousness done by a black man, I respect him. And if it's righteousness done by a white man or whatever man, I respect him. If it's unrighteousness done by any race, I disrespect it. And in this day and time, we are people are using our emotions against us by just doing anything. They want to make things popular. They just say, they rap certain rap songs to us. They dance a little bit. They'll do a little dance. They know that's current in hip hop culture or something like that. And we're just like, oh, that's my nigga. And we're just so gullible. But then if they want to antagonize us, or if a cop wants to get us riled up, he just says a word, nigger, or just says something, and we just automatically get so controlled by racism, right? Racism, because of our past history of dealing with it. We do not use logic and as a man sit down and logically think how we hurt them worse. By using the law against them, by coming together, by organizing or galvanizing one another in righteousness and in peace, and exuding all that makes a man appear and be righteous. Instead, we come back with just as much anger or twice as much violence against ourselves and each other, and we're just emotional. Now, people are taking this into sports when we know that there is racist judgment in sports. We know that we do deal with racism, but everything isn't racism. Floyd Mayweather is still no better boxers than black boxers, according to Ring Magazine, according to yearly claims in what they call credentials in terms of all-time greats. They always name black boxers. They always give us our credit, right? As black people. So we can't say that everything's race, because the richest boxer in the world is a black man. They allowed it to happen because they had no choice. If you earn it, they can't take it from you. So we can't sit there and say everything is racist, and we need proof. It can't just be emotional. It has to add up. Did he cheat or did he not cheat? Was your legs weak from a weight vest or not? Did Mark Breland drug you or did he not? See, this is the thing. Where does Mark Breland even have the reputation of doing things in that nature? Who he doesn't have any reputation or any. Why? Where is the motivation that a man making millions of dollars who has to pay a head trainer to cheat, that his fighter will lose and be worth less money, so that another man who's not paying him could win? Where's the incentive at? If I'm a trainer over a star key world champion fighter who's making millions of dollars, why would I spike his drink so that he cannot win, knowing that I'm the one who trains him so he could pay me continually to feed my family? It's just none of it is logical. None of it is logical. You get what I'm saying? So in this particular case in time, I think Deontay Wilder needs to go back to the drawing board and working on some fundamentals. I seen Deontay Wilder fight in the amateurs, and I said in the Olympics, and I said, man, he was actually a better boxer when he was younger. I think somewhere along the line he got caught up into this ancestry, new age spiritual worship, and instead of depending on some of the skills and fundamentals he was taught, he decided to go and depend on being the bronze bomber and trying to call on this alter ego, and now he just forgets skill. I just know I could land his right hand eventually. And that's what happened. He lost faith in having skill and in the true hard work and dedication that it took. Because I actually seen him box better when he was in the amateurs. And I feel like he would be so much more great of a threat if he just accepts that he cannot just walk around just think he could beat everybody with just swinging a wild right hand. You see what happened when he gets desperate or when he thinks he hurt somebody. He will wing it from back here. I mean, you see people doing that in street fights. And sometimes without yielding the right kind of skill, you make boxing an embarrassment. It makes it seem like anybody could walk inside there and throw a punch if they have a puncher's chance and win and become a world champion. So at some point in time, it was going to be ordained or fixed that he was going to have to lose so people could remain to take the sport seriously, man. I mean, sometimes you see the clips of Deontay Wilder, he's slipping and falling with his punches all the time, just winging it from left field, just hoping and having faith in power, and it didn't work. And what do you expect? He couldn't hurt Tyson Fury the second fight. He just couldn't hurt him. If you want to say he cheated with the gloves, if you want to say he cheated with the gloves the last fight, no problem. I even give you that. Where was Deontay's power? All right. So I ended. God bless, man. You know, repentance the last days. You know, peace, love, and blessings. Hopefully people understand what I'm saying. I'm not being biased. Of course, on average, I do usually go for black fighters because they're the most skilled. And me being black myself. But I go for whoever is the most skilled, man. That's it. That's how it is. I'm going by whoever entertains me the most. If all the black fighters are garbage, I see who's in the Mexican list. If all the Mexican lists are garbage, I see who's in the Asian. I don't care, man. You know, who is entertaining me? Who yields the skill? Who is gifted? You know, you got to take some of this race out of it, so you can have fair judgment and not be persuaded by emotions. And it's a time when we need to make sure that we are prudent in judgment and that we separate our emotions from our decisions. All right? So God bless, man.